Majora's Mask, released on April the 27th, 2000, is a testament to the innovation and unique experience that the staff members at Nintendo had to endure. We will be discussing the creation process of that game today. To understand how Majora's Mask came to be, we need to first look at its predecessor, Ocarina of Time, which released in 1998 with critical success with 1.6 million copies sold worldwide. As you can surely imagine, Shigeru Miyamoto didn't want to wait too long for a follow-up to that overwhelming success. Initially, this was going to be made in the form of Zelda Gaiden, which eventually became known to us as Master Quest. The point of Master Quest was to have a hard mode for Zelda. The plan was to mirror the world from left to right, increase the damage output of enemies, and remix the already existing dungeons. This was a quick and easy solution to get more content out there quickly. This didn't happen though, and Master Quest didn't see the light of day until 2002, releasing on the GameCube. Miyamoto saw Eiji Aonuma as the perfect candidate to work on Master Quest, as he was already on board on the team when working on Ocarina of Time. He was the lead dungeon designer, and he had also been involved with the series before, working on the original game. Aonuma wasn't happy about the idea that he had to go back and mess with and change all of his dungeons that he had just spent so much time perfecting. So in secret, he started to create brand new dungeons, instead of just altering the ones he had spent so much time on already. After he felt as though he had a decent concept and felt he had everything together to make a new game, he approached Miyamoto and requested that instead. Reluctantly, Miyamoto agreed. However, he would have 1 year to create this game. Permission granted, it was time to start work, and Aonuma was stretched too thin. They were going to be focusing mostly on the dungeons for the new game. So, knowing that he would need some help, he approached Yoshiaki Koizumi for help with creating the story of the game. And they agreed to this, but under one condition, and that condition being that they are allowed full creative freedom. Yoshiaki wanted to experiment and try out a concept for a game that would be a time loop, where instead of making a huge expansive world, you'd be reliving and re-experiencing the same areas again and again. The idea being that with every loop that the player goes through, they are learning more to prepare themselves for the next time they go through. But why does the moon have to fall? And why does there need to be a time loop? Well, this is where we get to the sad part of the inspiration that is the beauty of Majora's Mask. The footage you've just seen was of an air raid siren in Japan. I put this here because I wasn't able to find any footage of what it was like back in 1998 when a missile was launched from North Korea to Japan. In 1998, just before the release of Ocarina of Time, North Korea launched a missile. The Korean government and media tried to cover this up as a satellite being launched, but the Japanese government and military believed it was a ballistic missile there sent to destroy them. So the moon falling, sadly, is a direct inspiration from the Taepodong missile, which at the time was believed could have wiped out millions of lives. It's quite chilling to me to think about, in that the people of Termina in Majora's Mask looking up to the sky in fear that they may not make it to the next day is a direct reflection of the Japanese population. Unsurprisingly, this was incredibly scary, absolutely terrifying, and this affected many of the staff members that were at Nintendo, this including Yoshiaki Koizumi, who drew into the events that were happening around them and decided to inject realism into the story that he wanted to create. Each NPC and villager that you would speak to within Majora's Mask has something to say about the oncoming doom. And it's rather sad, really, when you think about the context behind what was really going on during development. The workload for the developers was huge, and many would work overtime consistently, so no wonder they were stressed. Compared to the last game that they got to work on, Ocarina of Time seemed to be fairly relaxed for them to work on. The origin of the story for Majora's Mask was born from nightmares that Yoshiaki was having. But this wasn't the only time that fear and nightmares influenced the game. Eiji Aonuma couldn't sleep because of the weight of the workload, and the stress was getting to him. He had a nightmare about being chased by Deku Scrubs. This was recreated into a cutscene for Link's curse being lifted and the soul of the Deku Scrub being healed. If you've played the game, then you can definitely tell that a lot of the assets have been reused from the previous game, and I can totally understand why, what with the time restrictions that they were under. However, when it comes to characters, this is one of the issues I have with the game, in that I have to pretend that these characters are not carbon copies from the previous installment, and it can really break my immersion at times. They've been given a new name, and I just have to try and look past it. The one character, I think the only character that you can look past easily, is the Happy Mask Salesman, because he is basically the same in his mannerisms and the way he acts, and his story in the second game as well as the first. But he acts as though he has no recollection of who Link is, which is strange. But all of the other character models that were reused are brand new characters in themselves. They've been given completely different backstories and rewritten. So it makes sense for them to not have any recollection as to who Link is. Speaking of NPCs, I think the best side quest in the game, and the one with the most original character models created for it, was the Anju and Cafe questline. And I think it's the best because it was inspired by real-life events. Many of the members of the team attended a wedding when the stress of missile strikes were about, and they commented that it was strange to be there when there was the chance of impending doom. They decided to take this experience and inject it into the game. Overall, I think what they've achieved with mostly already existing assets is fantastic. They've managed to create a totally different experience to the first game, and yet it still feels familiar to play. They have absolutely nailed the atmosphere of the game, especially the final hours before the moon falls. Ambience and the lighting and going around talking to all the different NPCs really sets the scene. Now, to wrap up, my personal overall thoughts on the game are that I believe that what they've done here is inspiring, in that even with the sheer amount of stress and fear around them, they've all come together and made something that brings a lot of people joy. And I think that's just wonderful. I think that's what we should all aspire to do, is bring other people happiness through the games that we create. Thank you for watching. And alongside this video, I've attached a document that includes all of my references and documentation that I've used for putting together this video.